The sound of twisting metal echoed through the quiet forest road like a gunshot in the dark. Rain slicked the pavement, and the shattered red sedan sat crooked against the guardrail, steam rising into the cold gray air. An elderly couple lay helpless on the asphalt, their world reduced to broken glass and fear. And towering over them, reeking of alcohol and rage, stood a wealthy man who believed money could erase any mistake. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for those who cannot defend themselves, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs a reminder that good still exists, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Harold and Margaret Whitmore had been married for 47 years. They were the kind of couple who still held hands in grocery store lines and argued gently about whose turn it was to choose the radio station. That afternoon, they were driving back from a small anniversary lunch in town. Harold, 78, had insisted on wearing his old beige blazer despite Margaret teasing him that it made him look too handsome for a quiet Tuesday. Margaret, 75, wore her favorite red skirt and a soft gray cardigan. They were laughing about a memory from their early years when the roar of an engine came screaming out of nowhere. The black luxury car appeared in their rearview mirror like a shadow growing larger and more reckless by the second. The driver swerved between lanes, tires hissing against the wet pavement. Harold barely had time to grip the steering wheel before the impact came. Metal slammed into metal. The world flipped sideways. The Whitmore's sedan spun, collided with the guardrail, and stopped with a violent shudder. Silence followed, broken only by the ticking of damaged machinery and Margaret's trembling breath. The other car skidded to a stop several yards away. Out stepped a man in an expensive burnt orange suit, his tie loosened, his eyes glassy. He staggered slightly but tried to steady himself with arrogance instead of balance. His name was Vincent Hale, a real estate magnate known in the city for buying half of downtown and bragging about it at charity galas. Tonight, alcohol had replaced charm, and entitlement had replaced restraint. Harold tried to help Margaret out of the car, but pain shot through his side. Blood trickled down from a cut on his forehead. Margaret's ankle twisted awkwardly beneath her, and she winced as she tried to sit up. They were vulnerable, confused, and frightened. Vincent stormed toward them, anger burning hotter than the alcohol in his veins. Instead of remorse, he hurled accusations. He blamed them for driving too slowly, for being on the road, for existing in his path. When Harold attempted to explain through labored breaths, Vincent's frustration exploded. He shoved Harold back to the pavement and kicked dust and rainwater toward Margaret as she tried to shield her husband. It was a scene almost too cruel to comprehend, a powerful man bullying two frail souls who had done nothing but survive long enough to become inconvenient. But down the road, another vehicle had slowed at the sight of the wreck. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reyes had spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL. Combat zones had taught him to read chaos like a language. He recognized danger before most people could name it. He had retired 2 years earlier and now lived quietly outside the city, training service dogs for veterans struggling to adapt to civilian life. In the passenger seat of his truck sat Titan, a German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes and the calm posture of a seasoned guardian. Daniel noticed the wreckage first. Then he noticed the body language, the aggressive stance of the suited men, the defenseless posture of the elderly couple on the ground. Instinct surged through him like an electric current. He pulled over without hesitation. The rain misted around him as he stepped out, boots steady on the slick pavement. Titan followed, alert but controlled, trained to respond only when commanded. Daniel's eyes assessed the scene quickly. Blood on Harold's temple, Margaret clutching her ankle, Vincent raising his foot again in drunken fury. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice, when it cut through the air, carried the quiet authority of someone who had faced real violence and survived it. Vincent turned, startled, and sneered at the sight of a man in a simple jacket and jeans. He saw no uniform, no badge, just another obstacle. Vincent staggered forward, arrogance swelling. He threatened lawsuits, bragged about lawyers, and mocked Daniel's interference. But Titan stepped slightly ahead, muscles taut, a low warning rumble vibrating from his chest. It wasn't wild aggression, it was disciplined protection. Daniel positioned himself between Vincent and the Whitmores. His presence was immovable. When Vincent tried to shove past him, Daniel reacted with the precision of a man trained for high-risk confrontations. He neutralized the movement swiftly, firmly, without unnecessary harm. Vincent stumbled backward onto the wet asphalt, stunned more by the loss of control than by the fall itself. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone else had called for help. Margaret's trembling hand reached for Harold's. Through tears, she whispered gratitude to Daniel, though her voice barely carried. Daniel knelt beside them, his demeanor shifting instantly from warrior to caretaker. He removed his jacket and placed it gently around Margaret's shoulders to shield her from the cold rain. He checked Harold's pulse and spoke calmly, grounding them in the present moment. Titan sat close, watchful but gentle, allowing Margaret's shaking fingers to rest against his thick fur. The dog's warmth and steady breathing seemed to slow her panic. In that fragile circle on the highway, something powerful was happening. Fear was being replaced with safety. Police and paramedics arrived swiftly. Vincent's wealth meant nothing against the sobriety test he failed spectacularly. Witnesses had begun recording. The narrative of power was unraveling in real time. As officers placed handcuffs on Vincent, his anger turned to desperate denial, but the evidence was undeniable. Harold and Margaret were transported to the hospital. Harold suffered cracked ribs, Margaret had a fractured ankle. Painful, yes, but survivable. And as they lay in adjacent hospital beds later that evening, hands reaching across the small gap between them, they spoke not of the crash but of the stranger who stepped into the storm. Daniel visited the next day with Titan. He stood awkwardly at first, and used to praise. Harold insisted on shaking his hand despite the discomfort. Margaret's eyes filled with tears as she thanked him for restoring not just their safety, but their faith. Daniel shrugged off the hero label. He said anyone would have done the same. But deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. Courage is a choice. So is indifference. News of the incident spread quickly. The footage captured by passing drivers painted a stark contrast, a wealthy aggressor abusing his privilege, and a quiet veteran standing firm without hesitation. The community rallied around the Whitmores. Medical bills were covered. Letters poured in. And something unexpected happened for Daniel, too. Several veterans reached out, inspired by the story, asking about the service dogs he trained. Donations to his small program surged. Titan became a local symbol of loyalty and protection. Out of violence came connection. Out of cruelty came compassion. Vincent Hale would face legal consequences, and for the first time in years, he would have to confront a reality not softened by wealth. Whether he learned from it remained uncertain. But the Whitmores had already chosen their lesson. They chose gratitude over bitterness. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who believes that courage still exists in ordinary moments. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word hope below if you believe that one brave act can change the course of someone's life. Weeks later, Harold and Margaret returned to that same stretch of road. The guardrail had been repaired. The pavement bore no scar of what had happened. They stood quietly, hands intertwined, breathing in the forest air. Fear no longer lived there. Because on the worst day of their lives, when cruelty seemed louder than compassion, someone chose to step forward instead of drive away. A retired warrior and his loyal K9 reminded everyone watching, and everyone hearing this story now, that strength is not about dominance. It is about protection. It is about standing in the gap when others cannot. And sometimes, the difference between tragedy and hope is one person brave enough to say, "Not today."